Okay, so I don't know what happened. We're going to do a restart. So this is the Taryn Lamb Show, season 9, episode number 11. We were talking with Mariana and we got disconnected. So I'm hoping that she's going to come back on here. But again, this is the Taryn Lamb Show. We are here most Tuesdays, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I don't know what happened, but let's see. Let's get Mariana back on. Hello, London. So, Mariana, are you there? We are on season 9, episode 11. Mariana was explaining to us. There you are. You're back. I don't know what happened.
What happened either. Just said live video ended, and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I guess
have no
we're
idea.
not done.
I know. I just shared the first one. I might delete it later because we can start like from the beginning. But I didn't want to discard, so I just hit share and got back on.
Let's do it.
So this is Mariana. She is sharing with us her journey. She was on the show a few years ago, and we're talking to her about, she's been helping a lot of people commit to growth and be resilient. But she's actually started to share her story of how she is committed to growth and how she was resilient. So go back and share that again for those who are just joining. This is the Taryn Lamb Show, season 9, episode 11.
All right, we'll start right from the beginning then. So for those of you that just joined, when I was on Taryn's show 2 years ago, we said, I was just about to finish my studies in kinesiology, and like the plan forever was to become a doctor. That was my dream for the last 10, 12 years of my life. So I finished my studies last year, and I entered a really incredible position right out of school, in a private healthcare position. And being in private healthcare, for those of you that might never have been in private healthcare or have never worked in healthcare, period, healthcare is not as glorified as we think it is, or at least as a pre-med, what I was perhaps promised it was going to look like. So for a lot of personal reasons, political reasons, I decided to step away from that dream because I was really confused. I didn't know if my values and the vision that I had for how I wanted to deliver health would align with what that field, the freedom that it really gives me. So I canceled my exam that I was due to write that summer to enter medical school this September. And I was like, what do I do with my time, with my drive, with my passion? So I decided to take a life coaching course last summer because it was always something I was really curious about. And on my podcast, I've had numerous life coaches of different kind of niches. So embodiment coaches, women's coaches, men's coaches. And I was like, maybe someday in my life I'll try this. And I was like, why not now? Right. So of course I took my course. I loved it. And previous viewers of your show might know, but I've had my show, the Commitment to Growth podcast, for 3.5 years now. So Commitment to Growth is really what I stood for and what I think I stand for still. And so I took Commitment to Growth and branded that as my business name. So when I was going through life coaching school and I was kind of choosing, well, how do I want to help people? And what is the kind of legacy that I want to leave behind in this world through this work? I started diving into literature around resilience, because that word was it's always been like a big buzzword to me. I love it. I have a bracelet that says I'm resilient in Spanish. And I was like, what are the gaps that really prevent people from feeling resilient and feeling like they can persevere? And what I started to see in the literature, and this was particularly based off of the work of a big inspiration of mine. His name is Dr. Michael Ungar. He's based out of Dalhousie University here in Canada. He looks at individualized resilience. So this idea that we have resilience as kind of like a very like narrow definition. Like, you're resilient if you have grit, and you're resilient if you can persevere through challenge. And you're resilient if you can mentally get yourself out of any problem and just get yourself to push through. But that doesn't take into consideration external factors that we can't modify, whether it's systemic discrimination, whether it's laws, whether it's just people's behavior towards us, right? There's a lot of external factors, but also his work is really centered around the idea that resilience isn't a way of living as much as it is how you set yourself up to persevere. So it's really about what I started to notice through the women that I was coaching and in the work that I was doing as I was going through life coaching school was, well, when I'm not taking care of my health, or I'm not prioritizing my social time, or I'm not hydrating even, right? The balance starts to flip. But then if things are somewhat balanced, then I feel like I've got a good launching pad for navigating challenge. So what I
Okay.
understood, it was, well, it's not really a way of living as much as it is the systems in our life. It's not even really a mindset. It's more about how are you setting yourself and
Okay.
your habits and your routines up to support you. So that really has been the message and the movement behind Commitment to Growth now is teaching women specifically how to heal cycles of disconnection, dysregulation, and disempowerment in their lives by helping them build that foundation holistically. So that is the last 2 years in a nutshell since we last
Okay.
talked. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so a couple of things. So what what's really weird is I actually really get that. I'm going to try to break it down for
I'm
myself,
sure
and you
you
tell
do
me
as
if
a personal trainer.
you
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
you tell me if I'm right. Because I am one where I will go, 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 and go.
Mm-hmm.
But that did not and does not set me up, as you say, for resilience.
Yeah.
And most recently, I have made a choice.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it's great, but I actually literally physically have to make the choice. And I've been getting massages, is my example.
Okay.
And
Good.
so for me, it's not something that I would, if you asked me when you were on the show before, I would not have purposely set myself up for that. I would not set myself up for relaxation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would fit it in,
Yeah.
but I would not purposely seek it out to set it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I am now working on, in the longevity, if you will, of Taryn,
Mm-hmm.
to purposely make that part of my thing, right?
Good. Yeah.
To keep me uh, resilient, because it instead I was doing the opposite and being worn down by
Mm-hmm.
not adding, or feel, or even maybe you can speak to this too, Mariana, or even feeling guilty.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. There's two things like we can pull apart there. So I think the where I'll start, and this is where for me helping women heal cycles of dysregulation is huge, is because we live in a society that perpetuates that state of go, go, go should be our baseline, right? So our nervous systems, like on a biological level, because I think in the psychological, mental, but also the biological kind of basis of what's going on up here, right? Um, Biologically, like we get used to the state of persistent stress. Like how many of us can say, for the people that are listening, for you, when there isn't stress in your life, you're like looking for a reason to be stressed. You're like, it's not normal if I'm not stressed. And I'm going to be super humble. I still struggle with that, right? Because we're told that unless you're being productive all the time, unless you're hustling towards something,
Yeah.
you don't have a purpose. You're not contributing to the world. And so this state of like being super antsy or like always looking for drama, stress becomes etched in how we walk through the world. So
Yes.
not only is the come down into a relaxing sunny Sunday morning really uncomfortable because we don't know how to be at ease and calm, it bumps into that guilt because now we tell ourselves, well, if I'm not doing something, that I'm not contributing to the world. Right now, if I'm not resting, I don't have purpose, I'm not worth this relaxation. And there's a very interesting concept in the world of resilience called the resilience paradox. So, what this concept looks at is that essentially there are times in which you have to elicit a certain type of resilience. So, for example, in my case, I'm starting a business. This is like, right, I'm doing this coaching practice all by myself and it's amazing and I'm so grateful for it. But it does mean that there are seasons in which I do have to be on my toes for 7 days a week, right? And that's okay so long as that doesn't become the 4 seasons. It's just like a period of time, because the resilience paradox, what it says is, if you elicit like a lot of resilience in one area of your life in a certain way, the come down from that, or the harm that it causes on other areas of your life is also there, right? That's why it's called a paradox, because it's like, well, you're being resilient, but then all of a sudden you might turn around and be like, oh my gosh, well, I missed some spots, or I actually ended up more stressed or more burnt out in this case, right? There's a myriad of examples, but I think it comes down to like the systems that have set us up to believe the state that we're in. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get it, because like I said, I just now figuring out how to. I like that you've said set yourself. That's going to be my thing. Like, and like I almost feel like when you do stuff, not you but me, when I start doing things, I'm going to ask myself, is this setting me up for resilience? Now that you've said that sentence, you know, I'm going to asking myself, is this setting me up to be resilient, or is this setting me up to be like burnt out?
And it's individualized every time you, depending on what you're going for, right? Because there are times in which, like I said, you do have to have a couple days, weeks of go, right? But I think the question, more than it is, what is this setting me up for resilience? Because you could say that anything is setting you up for resilience, right? It's more, is this honoring the pace of life at which you want to be walking at? Right? Because you could make the argument that a lot of things will make you resilient, right? Like eating healthy will make you resilient, just like avoiding a hard conversation might make you feel resilient, right? Because it just means that you're able to carry on without like the angstiness of the conversation. It's more, does this honor the kind of life that you want for yourself? Because I'm sure you've experienced this, like we all have this idea of maybe like being at a steady baseline all the time, but if we're doing the opposite of that and like always grinding, you have these periods of like, well, you rest because you've burnt out, and then you're on a high again after you rested, and then you do it again, right? So it's, if you want to walk instead of be like running and crashing, what does that take, and what do you have to do to maybe stay on that steady baseline? We're all going to have our highs and lows, right? But
so does this honor the place where I want to be? Does this honor how I want my life to be right now? That maybe it should be the question. But I think but because I feel like, I have to ask that will be the question I'm going to ask myself. Does this honor where I want my life to be right now? Because to your point, it might be okay. That might be where I want my life to be at that moment, is hustling, whatever. But it may not be, in which case I need to realize, okay, it's okay not to be, it's okay to be. I think it's what you're saying.
Totally.
Don't be okay with being hustle, but it's okay be okay with not being hustle. It depends on where you want to be. Jordan is on the line. I see her right here, and she's actually really she's helping teach me that too, right? And she's learning herself, like how to be resilient, and how to honor herself and honor her body, and honor where she wants to be. It's good.
Shout out Jordan.
Said that now. I'm sure she can relate to what you're saying totally. And honoring yourself and honoring where you want to be at the moment.
Totally.
So I guess, but maybe can you give me, and I say me because I'm the one talking to you. Luckily, I get to hear it. Everybody else is going to hear it too on Apple Podcasts, whatever they're listening to it on. Some tools maybe, because it is a struggle, Mariana, to be okay with that, right? It is okay with a struggle to even ask yourself that question, or speak for myself. It's a hard question to ask yourself, because you are so, like you said, in this use of telling yourself, if you're not doing something, you're not contributing to society,
Totally.
So how do you do that? What are some tools that we can use, or some things we can do to keep ourselves okay with that?
Yeah, I know one thing that came to mind, and this is a question that I had to really ask myself and answer honestly recently, was for people who are listening and maybe you've been pushing and pushing, ask yourself, what are the areas of your life in which you've been running without reaching a finish line. Because sometimes it's so easy to run and run and run. By run, I mean you're investing more into your business and you're taking more courses and you're going to the gym 5-6 times a week and you're having all these conversations with your partner, but nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And I think that is it's a twofold process of, why am I running? Like, why do I feel like I have to add more to the sauce here? And the other side is, what would happen if I surrendered? Because I think a lot of that tendency to run and push and drive and not stop comes from a very innate human fear, which is we fear uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of being resilient is being okay with being uncertain. Yeah, I know, like, part of me also cringes up when I say that. But the only certain thing that you and I, the listeners, have is who we show up as and the choice that we get in that. So a lot of women that I coach or that come to my women's circles talk about their experiences with uncertainty in dating, for example. So they're like, well, I have certain attachment styles, or I'm sending messages and this person isn't responding, or they took them 2 days to respond, I'm also going to take 2 days to respond. And it's like, well, if you want to cultivate an attitude of resilience, in this case, like to be able to face those challenges with resolve and peace and clarity, you have to show up first as the person that you would want to have reflected back at you.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, is the starting point for anybody who's asking themselves, whether in dating or at the gym or in their professional life, who is the person that you want to be in all of those situations. Become that person first, because when you're so firmly rooted in who you are and the culture that you set for yourself and build around yourself, life becomes a mirror. The opportunities that you want, the relationships that you desire, the peace that you want, everything will start gravitating towards you, but you have to step into that version of you first. So I think the hard question there is, what's the gap between like where I am now and the life I want to live? Like, what is that in between space? But it takes the pressure off of you having to control the outside world, because no peace ever came from seeking it on the outside, So I think that's a big question that people can start asking themselves. And I know one exercise that I did at a workshop recently that was super powerful, and I've been doing ever since, like pretty consistently. You make a T-chart of, like, you list out on the left side everything that you do in a day. I'm talking like wake up, wait, in my case, like I have the iPhone alarm that if you snooze it, it goes off again in 9 minutes, right? So, snooze my alarm, wake up again, all the way to like when you go to bed, like every single thing. And then on the right, you write down the goals that you want for yourself. 6-figure business, romantic relationship, beautiful house on the water. And then you go back to the left side of your list and you cross out the things that you're doing in a day that aren't supporting what you want to create on the right side of the list. So a lot of times, I think cultivating more resilience isn't about adding more to who we are or what we're doing. It's actually about, I think in this world of being hyper connected on our phones and technology and everything, it's actually about subtracting, because what you have is already right in front of you. It's just about shifting your attention to see where it is. So those are two big but significant practices that people can do.
Too. I mean, I heard something that I thought was really good. I thought, and I don't know who I heard it from, but it was like, again, kind of like the gap, but it was also being okay. I think that's a lot of it. It's like being okay with it. And it was something like, if stuff wants to go on around you, or people want to do certain things, right? I don't have a good example, but the quote was, just let them.
Oh yeah, the Mel Robbins let them theory. Yeah. I do.
I thought that was good because it kept me in this space of, again, I'm going to use your question, does it honor where I want to be in my life and where I want to be now, instead of trying to control all these different situations. I like that I can let them, but I also like that I can reflect what I want to see, right? So that doesn't mean let them, doesn't mean change me.
Yes, exactly.
It means
well said.
Let them.
Yeah.
And what you're telling me is that I can do both, right? I can reflect the person I want to see, but let them.
Exactly. Yeah, the human experience is both and, right? Like so, you can. I think so much of our grief.
Was that who I saw? Who was it? Did you say I saw?
Mel Robbins. She's the one that came up with the let them theory.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, who was that? I did see. I thought
I think it's like her most listened episode, because it's so true, right? Like we take so much heaviness and stress off our shoulders when we accept that we cannot control the outside world. And Tony Robbins said this in one of his videos that I recently watched. He said, people who suffer the most are the people who are way too obsessed with themselves. And he didn't mean like people who are cocky and people who are like batting their hair around, he meant people who are like looking around and they're like, that stranger looked at me weird because I'm probably dressed funny, or my friend isn't responding to my text because they are angry and I did something. We get in these spaces within ourselves where we're like treating life like it's happening to us instead of being firmly rooted in who we are and how we're showing up to challenges and to things that make us uncomfortable, because that's where our control is. And at the end of the day, somebody does something to you that doesn't sit with you, that hurts, honor that. Like, it's not, being okay with surrender is not the same as indifference. I don't think. I think that's the critical difference, is things can hurt. You're allowed to hold pain, you're allowed to hold disappointment, you're allowed to hold frustration to other people, so long as you also understand that on its own is a tool for you to get deeper with yourself and to how you want to show up and walk through the world. So
well, that's why I like that's why I like, at the end of it all, is it honoring where I want to be right now. I like that, asking myself that, because even if like I said, even if I'm letting them and following that, this is what I'm doing, honoring me. Like, exactly. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean, to your point, it doesn't necessarily mean let them walk all over you, or let you be a doormat, or whatever that is, right? Because then that doesn't honor where I want to be, right? But it might mean not, I don't know, telling them 1,000 times or whatever, not controlling it, right?
Yeah, like not trying to control how they show up or anything. It's just
honoring what I want to do. Because being, I think I feel like I like those too. But I'm going to ask myself, like I said, does this honor where I want to be right now? Because I think I'm in this season of thinking about like that. Like, does this honor where I want to be, as I look at not being tired, right? Not being exhausted, not being in the cycle of what you were saying before, of just constantly go, 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 or feeling like if I'm not going, that I'm unproductive or unworthy, or all those things that come along with, not honoring your space.
Yes.
And
one thing too that I think is important, to speak to your point there, I think for people who are listening and they're like, yeah, but if I don't show up, then so-and-so is going to be disappointed with me, right? I know you and I can probably relate to that as business owners, right? Like, we have clients who depend on us. We have an audience who depends on us, right? Ask yourself, who is really holding you by like the neck of your shirt and telling you that if you don't put out 100% every single day, you're a failure, you're a disappointment. Like, who really is holding you to that? And maybe what starts coming up there is my parents, right? As a daughter of immigrants, I can totally relate to that, right? Maybe it was teachers, coaches. I can also relate to that, having been a professional gymnast years ago, right? What are you holding on to that isn't yours to carry, that somebody else put on your shoulders? I think that's important too, because obviously I don't really believe that we just come up with these things on our own, right? Like we learn and absorb from the world and
Yeah.
how we were treated, right? But what did people tell you was true about how you needed to show up in the world? But what is actually true to you about the life that you want to live, like we were saying, right? If you want a slower life with slower mornings, with still a lot of purpose and drive, you can have that. You don't have to walk at the pace that other people are telling you to walk. And I think understanding what our truth is and what that feels like is what we can always fall back into when we're entering those older patterns of like, no, I have to be going all the time, you
And
know?
I think, so you guys, this is the Taryn Lamb Show, season number 9, episode number 11. We're talking with Mariana with being able to be resilient and committing to growth. Make sure you're following her and liking her page and podcast as well. I just had another example that I had for myself. First of all, what you said, but I also think people don't really care. You know what I mean? Like
No.
if you say no, I mean, most of the time, if you boundaries and say no, people are understanding. I had a situation the other day where I was traveling. So I was traveling at the end of the week.
Okay.
And I said at the beginning of the week, I said, I can't train this week because I'm traveling at the end of the week. And, when you're traveling, it's total chaos, when you're getting ready to get going.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me that when you were first on the show, I would have had to get my training in. I would have came home at the 11th hour. I would have thrown some stuff in the bag and I would have been exhausted and traveled at the end of the week.
Yeah.
But what I did instead, and it's almost funny because it was really intentional. It felt really weird telling people I'm not training this week because I'm leaving at the end of the week. And I was thinking in my head, well, they're probably thinking like, well, you're not leaving like today. Like, why can't you train me today?
Yeah.
Because you're leaving in 3 days. But I just said to myself, I can't because this is my time to train.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to go home and organize my life so that I can leave at the end of the week. And I said that and they said, oh, no problem. And I was like, no, no one really cared. You know what I mean? They were totally understanding, right? It's not like they didn't care about me or whatever. They totally got it. They were like, oh my gosh, when you are traveling, your head's, you're crazy. So we totally get it. We'll catch up with you next week.
It's okay. And it's like, when I honor myself, people honor me too. How about that? Yeah, it's true. Well, and it also, I think it takes the idea off of your shoulders that somebody else's truth is also your truth. Like just because some people do train at the beginning of the week and they're okay with that before going traveling doesn't mean that you have to be, because you know your body better than anybody else, right? Your definition of resilient is going to be different than somebody else's definition of resilience based on what they can adapt to, what they can make space for, what drives them, what doesn't motivate them, right? Like it's all individual. I think that's what I really like about my work, is I get to help women define that on an individual basis. So I love to hear that is something that you stepped into, because that's powerful. That's powerful.
I've not gotten it down pat.
That's okay.
It's very, very, very hard. Because I thought someone's going to think poorly of me.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be upset with me, right? Because I didn't train them at the beginning of the week. But they were not, and I was taken aback by myself. I was shocked at myself for saying it. Then I was shocked at myself for them being so positive, even though I don't know why I thought they were going to be negative. There would be no reason for them to be negative.
Yeah.
More, I was shocked at myself for even letting the words come out of my mouth. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
But when I continue to ask myself this question that you've now taught me, as does this honor where I want to be right now, that honored where I wanted to be because I needed like a moment to organize my life.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm telling you, like, I'm so shocked with it. You can tell I'm still learning because I'm like, am I doing
That's
this
the
right?
thing. That's the
Like,
fun thing about life is that you have to have a learner's mindset because it never ends. It
yeah.
never ends. Also, a huge aspect of resilience is if you treat life like the school that you show up to, like it doesn't end at grade 12 or university, everybody. It's literally that's just like institutionalized school. Life is a school every single day. And I think that's the fun part too, is you get to go to bed and ask yourself that every single day, like what did I learn today? Like what was I put in situations to learn and absorb and adapt to because you are meant to for some reason. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, we're over time, and I know we started a little bit late. We had our snafu,
We
but
did.
this is what I'm speaking of committing to growth.
Okay,
So I'm going to have you on again,
we're coming back.
and what I'm
Okay,
going to do is between now and whenever we decide, we'll decide on our own.
fantastic. Okay.
On some of these practices, and I'm going to tell you. I'm going to report back live on how they're going.
Ah,
And
accountability. We love that.
my
We
challenge to
love that.
it's not a challenge. It is a challenge to me. I need to report back to you whenever we decide how asking myself, you guys, we're gonna wrap up here. But if you're listening and you listen on Apple Podcasts, go back and listen to all the things that Mariana said. She had a few questions for us. The one I am going to remember to ask myself is, does this honor where I want to be in my life right now?
Hmm.
I'm going to ask
I'm
myself.
gonna hold you to that. Holding you to that.
And I'm going to tell you how many times I fumbled the ball, because I'm sure that I
And it's
will.
okay if you do.
But
It's
I'm
okay if
also
you do.
going to tell you how many times I've succeeded. And now that I have, and it's so funny that you're giving me an actual question, because I couldn't really probably figure out what I needed to ask myself. I knew I needed to do something,
Mhm.
but this has given me a structure to ask myself. Does that make sense? Like,
Absolutely.
it's given me.
Absolutely. And for you, and yeah.
But if you're listening to this, if you go back and you listen to the beginning, or you're just listening to the end, or whatever you're doing, go back and listen to the whole thing, because Mariana has a few questions that we should be asking ourselves.
Mhm.
I'm eating elephant one bite at a time and just gonna ask myself this one thing.
That's okay. And yeah, go back and listen to the practices that I suggested in the episode, but also to you and for anybody listening, if you walk away from the episode and you start asking yourself these same questions, it's okay if you fall more times than you get up, or it's okay if you spend more of your time on the ground than you do walking, because so much of cultivating that individualized resilience is about unlearning so much, and I don't think we give enough understanding and credit to the work physically, mentally, emotionally that really takes. So just know that you're going to crash and burn,
Yeah.
and that's okay because you get to learn from those crashes and burns and the scrapes and bruises and all that. But that is resilient. It's breaking yourself down to come back stronger in its
Ooh,
essence.
girl.
So,
Ooh.
mhm.
Hello to who's saying hello.
Hi.
Um,
Okay.
that's a mouthful. So I end every podcast or end every episode with the question. So first of all, thank you for coming back on. I'm so excited the way you
Thank you.
because
Thank you.
um and go back and listen, you guys, to the first one.
2
So go back and listen
years
to
ago.
yeah.
Yes.
um Thank you for that. Thank you for committing to your own growth and committing to our growth
Thank
as a
you.
public community. We appreciate that, because like I said, I'm going to ask myself that question. So um the last question, which I always ask everyone, what are you curious about?
Oh my gosh. I forgot about this.
I know.
I forgot.
That's always on every episode because of those cats. So I think about cats. So what are you curious about? Uh-oh. I can't hear you now. The volume is not letting us be great.
Oh,
There.
can you hear me now?
Yes. What are you curious
Oh my
about?
gosh. Sorry. It was like your Instagram limit is on.
Oh, okay. Real fast.
I'm curious about why I still have that time limit on my phone, honestly. What I'm curious about right now is I think how I can honestly surrender more to what life is trying to show me. So, I actually made the executive decision yesterday that I was going to take a hiatus from my own podcast for the summer because I started working full time and it's a really special internship and I want to be fully present. And exactly what I told you about who is really holding you by the shirt and telling you that if you don't show up every single week, you're failing, right? Like having that moment with myself of you're not letting anybody down if you're honoring where you're at and your needs and where they are at. You get to take that pressure off of yourself. So I think the next step from that has been, well, what's going to come now that I'm allowing myself to step into a place of more reverence and surrender and shifting my attention to cultivating other things. So I will let you know what happens when we tune back in because we're coming back.
But we both have something to talk about when we come back.
Something to talk about, yes.
Accountability, live accountability, girl.
Exactly. We love it. We love it.
2 years and now we're going to keep each other accountable.
That's what this is all about. That's what it's all about. Thank you so much for having me on. It was such a pleasure to see you again after 2 years, and I'm excited to see what happens when we tune back in.
I know I already feel like, but now Taryn, don't put pressure on yourself. That's not where you want to be.
Don't. Yeah. Don't. Just surrender.
Yeah.
Just let go. Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. We went a little bit over, but thank you very much, for Mariana for Growth and Committing to Growth podcast. And everybody take care of each other and yourself, and we'll be back.
We will be back. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.